Happy fall, y'all. Just like the weather, things in our market are changing pretty rapidly. So I'm here as usual with Ruben to talk about what's going on in the market right now. Ruben, what are we going to talk about today? What's most important?
We've got three big things, right? We're going to hit NAR existing home sales like we always do and go through what those numbers mean. We're going to talk about the letters that the NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and the NAHB, the National Association of Home Builders, sent to the Fed, what they were asking, what they mean for us. And then we're going to jump into the fact that student loans are going to be up for repayment again starting this month for, a large chunk of the population.
Yeah, all super important topics. So when we dig in on the first one, those existing home sales for September, we hit some pretty lows for our industry. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we were at the lowest pace for existing home sales since about 2010 on a monthly basis. That's pretty low. Like we hit the lowest level and basically NAR's record in 2010 when we hit 3.45. So just to some context of like how low historically home sales have dipped before.
Gotcha.
When we get into why, it's a couple of things. One, we know that mortgage rates are hitting very high levels right now, close to 8%. But we also know that inventory is extremely low. That's another thing that's been hitting near all-time low records this year,
right,
as the number of houses actually available for sale nationally.
Yeah, and that number of homes for sale is still going up in price. So how is that happening?
It's actually fairly simple when you really just boil it down, which is it doesn't really matter the number of homes that are for sale or the number of buyers individually. What matters is the difference between the two, right? Mm-hmm. If you have more buyers than you have sellers, even if there's only 2 houses and 20 buyers, prices are going to be driven up by the competition amongst the buyers to get those houses. Yep. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at extremely low inventory. And that's even with suppressed demand and high mortgage rates, it's still enough to keep putting pressure on prices.
Yeah. So high interest rates, but not enough homes generally for the number of buyers that are out there buying them, putting pressure on those home prices. Is there an end in sight? What do we think? Is this the bottom? Have we hit the bottom?
I think that's fairly likely. I don't think there's a lot more room for home sales to dip. What we don't know is how wide the bottom is, how many more months of this we're looking at. There's not a lot of indication that mortgage rates are going to fall by a lot anytime soon. So it's really, what is it going to take to get the supply back out there? And what's it going to take to get mortgage rates down some? And we'll get into that a little bit with these letters, right? Because that's one of the main things they're trying to address.
Yeah. So we know what's going on with housing market, but in the background, the National Association of Realtors and the National Association of Home Builders, 2 pretty powerful organizations, they sent letters to the Fed specifically asking for what?
Yeah, so the first one was very basic. It was tell everyone you're not going to raise interest rates anymore. It's easy for all of us, I think, to get our heads around that one. We know what that means.
Sure.
The second one was a little bit further out there, which was they basically asked them, stop letting the number of mortgage-backed securities you're holding go down. So way back in the day, they bought a whole bunch of mortgage-backed securities to help support the market. By doing that, they basically lowered mortgage rates.
So what I think I'm hearing you say, because this is a lot for some of our folks who don't know a lot about the bond market or mortgage-backed securities, but there's a gap. And you and I talk about this a lot, right? You've got what the Fed sets as the bank rate between how banks lend money to each other. And we hear that number come out. But then there's the mortgage rate, which is up here. And the gap in the middle is where these mortgage-backed securities are affecting things either one way or the other. And what the National Association of Realtors and National Association of Home Builders were asking is stop not reinvesting in those because it's putting the wrong kind of pressure on mortgage rates. They're going up instead of down. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. And essentially what NAR has been saying is mortgage rates are higher than they need to be. This isn't helping inflation in the economy. It's not meeting your goals. You need to do something to bring them down. And one of the things you can do is stop letting the number of mortgage-backed securities you have in your rolls go down. Yeah. When we were talking about how right now the things in our economy that are looking really positive are great, right? GDP, you said, was going up and we've got low unemployment. So these things are indicating that changes in our environment and the housing market maybe are a little too extreme. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the economy outside the housing market, outside of global events, unemployment's at 3.8%. GDP is projected to come in around between 2 and 2.5% this year. Q3 may be as high as 4%.
Wow.
Things are going well. We don't see a big increase in the people losing their jobs. We do see some small trends in the number of job openings coming down, which is okay, and wages slowing down, which we need to get inflation in line.
Sure.
But overall, the U.S. economy is doing really well. The odds we get where people are calling a soft landing, meaning we don't get a recession as a result of dealing with inflation, are going down. So it's going to shift the conversation to the housing market in particular, because it's really sort of the biggest kind of struggling part of our economy right now. How do we address that? How do we get that more normal while still meeting our inflation goals?
Yeah, because the good news is the economy is doing well overall. The tough news for us in real estate is that we're not seeing that same effect in our market in particular. So NAR and NAHB, they're asking for help. Help us, help you, economy, right? But there's more to it. There's another big decision that not necessarily was made, but that is now in implementation, which is that student loan debt is coming due. How does that affect us?
Yeah, so to give context, there's about 45 million people who have student loan debt. That makes up about 20% of the working age population in the United States. So
Wow.
1 in 5 people are going to be dealing with this. The average loan size is somewhere between $33,000, $35,000. The average loan payment's around $300 a month. So that money is going to be reallocated now. That's money that could have been going other places. It's now going to be going to banks, and they're going to be deciding where it goes after that, right?
Yeah. Well, and so people were spending or saving, hopefully saving some of that money they weren't spending on their student loans. And when we talked earlier, that savings might be sitting there waiting to buy a home, but people are having to make a choice right now. Do I pay my student loan off or down, or do I go buy a house? Where's that going to come into play?
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things we know is the math in that changed a lot over the last year, right?
Right.
They may have been saving on the assumption that they could handle their news, because they saw this coming in theory, that I can handle my $300 a month payment if I take on this $1,500 a month mortgage, right? Well, now maybe that $1,500 a month mortgage is a $2,500 a month mortgage. That math doesn't work, but I've saved this money. Do I just keep waiting and saving more and more until the math works? Or do I just take this money I've saved, pay off my $35,000 in student loans, which is the average, but also pretty close to what you would need for a down payment on a house in some cases, right? So depending on their level of savings, they have that option. And right now, it's probably going to look more appealing because they're going to save themselves all that interest. They're not looking at a housing market where they think they're going to be able to participate very soon. So it's just changing people's financial math, essentially, and kind of pushing them away from our market, unfortunately.
Well, and the other thing that comes up for me in that, we talked about this in the very first market snapshot that we did this summer, was that the supply and demand issue is not necessarily that we don't have demand, right? And we're seeing that in the housing market right now. Prices are still increasing because the demand is there. If we see all these people sit on the sidelines even longer because of the student loans, that demand is just in the background waiting to be released, like that kink in the hose that we mentioned last time. So at some point, something's got to give.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. There's a lot of reasons why the housing market could be doing better than it is right now. I think we have the demographics, we have the economy. There's a lot of reasons why if something changes to make things more affordable, we could see a lot more transactions.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. That's the good news for today. And then really what we want people to understand is that it's always the right time to buy the right piece of real estate. And all of these conversations should be helpful in meeting with your realtor, talking about, should I buy, should I sell? For some folks, the answer might be no. Like you talked about with the student loan payment, it might not be the right time right now. For others who have a ton of equity in their home, you might still be able to get a great deal.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think it's super important right now for realtors to stay in conversations with their clients and for themselves to stay informed as well, which I would encourage everyone, subscribe. We're going to be talking about this stuff every month and make sure that you're going to be getting these updates as they come out.
Absolutely. So we'll be back again next month with another market snapshot to talk about all things market and what's going on to help keep you informed.